I never thought my life would turn out like this. I always believed in the sanctity of marriage, in the vows we took, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. But here I am, sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, staring at my wife's phone records, feeling like the ground beneath me has crumbled. Her name is Emily, and we've been married for 12 years. 12 years of building a life together, raising our 2 kids, and supporting each other through thick and thin. Or, so I thought. It all started a few months ago, when Emily began spending more time at work. She's always been ambitious, and I admired that about her. She runs a small but successful marketing agency with her business partner, Mark. They've been working together for about 5 years now, and I never had a reason to doubt their professional relationship. Mark was always friendly, the kind of guy who'd crack jokes at family barbecues and remember everyone's birthdays. He even helped me fix my car once. I trusted him. I trusted both of them. But lately, something felt off. Emily would come home late, claiming they had client meetings or deadlines. She'd be on her phone more often, smiling at texts she wouldn't share with me. At first, I brushed it off. Work stress, I told myself. But then, the little things started adding up. The way she'd dress up more for work, the way she'd avoid eye contact when I asked how her day was, and then there were the nights she'd roll over in bed, her back to me, as if I were a stranger. I tried to talk to her about it, but she'd shut me down. "You're being paranoid, Alex," she'd say. "Mark and I are just swamped with work. You know how it is." But I didn't know. Because when I'd call her office, her assistant would say she was in a meeting, and when I'd text her, she'd reply hours later with a vague excuse. My gut told me something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. Not Emily, not us. Then one night, I couldn't take it anymore. She'd come home late again, her perfume smelling different, her lips slightly smudged. I waited until she fell asleep and took her phone. I know it was wrong, but I had to know. And there it was, texts from Mark, filled with heart emojis and inside jokes. Plans to meet up at a hotel downtown. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages, each one a dagger to my heart. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, was having an affair with her business partner. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in the dark, replaying every moment of our marriage, wondering where I went wrong. Was I not enough? Did I not give her enough attention? The questions gnawed at me, but there were no answers. Just the cold, hard truth staring back at me from her phone. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. I made breakfast for the kids, kissed Emily goodbye, and went to work. But inside, I was a mess. I couldn't focus, couldn't think straight. All I could see were those texts, those betrayals. I needed to know more. I needed proof. So, I started digging. I followed her after work, watched as she met Mark at a restaurant, their laughter echoing through the window. I took pictures, my heart breaking with every click of the camera. When I finally confronted her, it was late at night. The kids were asleep and the house was quiet. I showed her the pictures, the texts, the evidence of her lies. At first, she denied it. "It's not what it looks like, Alex," she said, her voice trembling. But when I pressed her, she broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she admitted everything. She and Mark had been seeing each other for months. "It started as innocent flirting," she said, "but then it turned into something more. Something she couldn't control." I felt numb. The woman I loved, the life we built together, was crumbling before my eyes. "Why, Emily?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't give me a straight answer, just more tears, more apologies. But apologies couldn't fix this. Nothing could. Now, I'm sitting in my car, staring at her phone records, wondering what to do next. Do I fight for our marriage? Do I walk away? The kids are my priority, but how do I explain this to them? How do I explain that their mom betrayed us all? This is just the beginning of my story, and I don't know how it will end. But one thing's for sure, nothing will ever be the same again. The days after the confrontation were a blur. Emily moved out temporarily, saying she needed space to figure things out. Space? I wanted to scream at her. What about the space she invaded when she decided to betray our marriage? But I didn't. Instead, I sat in silence, staring at the walls of our home, now eerily quiet without her laughter or the kids' constant chatter. They were staying with my parents for the weekend, and for the first time in years, I was truly alone. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, Emily and Mark, his hands on her, her smile directed at him instead of me. It was like a movie on repeat, and I couldn't hit pause. I replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I might have missed. Was it the time she came home late from a business trip with lipstick on her collar? Or the way she'd suddenly started working out more, buying new clothes, as if she were trying to impress someone? Maybe it was the way she'd stopped asking about my day, stopped caring about the little things that used to matter to us. I felt like a fool. How could I not have seen it? How could I have trusted her so completely? A week after she left, Emily called. Her voice was soft, hesitant, as if she were afraid of what I might say. "Alex, we need to talk," she said. "About us, about the kids, about everything." I agreed to meet her at a park near our house. It felt safer there, out in the open, where I couldn't lose my temper or say something I'd regret. When I saw her, my heart ached. She looked tired, her eyes red from crying, but she was still beautiful. Still the woman I fell in love with all those years ago. And that made it hurt even more. We sat on a bench, the autumn leaves crunching beneath our feet. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "I'm sorry, Alex," she said, her voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, my voice cold. "You don't just accidentally fall into bed with someone, Emily. You made a choice. Every text, every lie, every time you looked me in the eye and told me nothing was wrong, those were choices." She flinched, but I didn't stop. "Do you love him?" I asked, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. "I don't know," she whispered. "It's complicated." Complicated. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're my wife, Emily. We have 2 kids together. We built a life together. And you're standing here telling me it's complicated?" She started crying then, her shoulders shaking as she buried her face in her hands. "I never wanted this, Alex. I never wanted to hurt you. But things between us, they haven't been right for a long time. We've been drifting apart, and I felt alone." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Alone? She felt alone? What about me? I was the one sitting in an empty house, wondering where it all went wrong. I was the one trying to hold everything together while she was off playing house with Mark. "So what now?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Do you want a divorce? Is that what this is about?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at me. Her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and sadness. "I don't know," she said finally. "I need time to figure things out. For me. For us. For the kids." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she didn't deserve time, that she'd already taken enough from me. But I didn't. Instead, I stood up, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Take all the time you need, Emily," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "But don't expect me to wait around for you to make up your mind." I walked away then, leaving her sitting on that bench, her tears falling onto the ground like raindrops. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because if I did, I might have broken down, and I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain. But no matter how busy I was, the thoughts always crept in. What would happen to us? To the kids? Would Emily and Mark end up together, building a new life while I picked up the pieces of the one they destroyed? I started seeing a therapist, someone to help me sort through the mess in my head. It wasn't easy, talking about my feelings, admitting how broken I felt, but it helped. Slowly, I began to realize that this wasn't just about Emily's betrayal. It was about me too. about the person I'd become, the husband I'd been, and the father I wanted to be. One night, after a particularly tough therapy session, I called Emily. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. "Alex? We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. "About the kids. About how we move forward. Because whether we're together or not, they deserve better than this." She agreed, and we met again, this time at our house. The kids were still with my parents, and the silence felt heavier than ever. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless meals and laughter, and talked, really talked, about our mistakes, our regrets, and our hopes for the future. It wasn't easy. There were tears, anger, and moments when I wanted to walk away. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were being honest with each other. And that honesty, as painful as it was, gave me a glimmer of hope. But hope is a fragile thing, and I knew better than to hold on to it too tightly. Because even as we talked, even as we tried to find a way forward, there was one question lingering in the back of my mind, one I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. Did I still love her? The kids came home the following weekend. Emily and I had agreed to keep things as normal as possible for their sake, but the moment they walked through the door, I could tell they sensed something was wrong. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. They can feel tension in the air, even if they don't understand where it's coming from. My daughter, Lily, who's 9, was the first to ask. "Where's Mom?" she said, looking around the living room. "Isn't she here?" I forced a smile, kneeling down to her level. "Mom's been really busy with work," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But she'll be here soon, okay?" Lily nodded, but her eyes were filled with questions. My son, Jake, who's 6, didn't say much. He just hugged me tightly, as if he could sense I needed it. That hug broke me in ways I didn't expect. How could I explain to them that their family might never be the same? That the two people they loved most in the world had hurt each other in ways they couldn't understand? Emily arrived an hour later, her smile strained as she walked through the door. The kids ran to her, their excitement momentarily masking the tension in the room. But as the day went on, the cracks began to show. Emily and I moved around each other like strangers, our conversations clipped and awkward. The kids noticed. Of course they did. That night, after we'd put them to bed, Emily and I sat in the kitchen, the silence between us heavy. "We can't keep doing this," I said finally, my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. "They know something's wrong." Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know," she said. "But what do we tell them, Alex? That their mom made a terrible mistake? That their parents might not stay together?" Her words hung in the air, a painful reminder of the reality we were facing. "We tell them the truth," I said after a moment. "Not all of it, but enough. They deserve to know that we're trying to figure things out, but that we love them, no matter what." Emily nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate what I've done to us, to them." I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay. But the truth was, I didn't know if it would be, and I couldn't pretend otherwise. The next morning, we sat the kids down at the kitchen table. Lily looked nervous, her hands fidgeting, in her lap, while Jake just stared at us, his eyes wide. "We need to talk to you about something," I began, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "Mom and I are going through a tough time right now, and we're trying to figure some things out. But no matter what happens, we want you to know that we love you more than anything, okay?" Lily frowned, her brow furrowing. "Are you getting a divorce?" she asked, her voice trembling. Emily and I exchanged a glance. "We don't know yet," Emily said gently. "But whatever happens, we're still a family, and we'll always be here for you." Jake looked confused, his little face scrunched, up in thought. "But why?" he asked. "Why are you sad?" I reached out, ruffling his hair. "Sometimes grown-ups have problems they need to work through," I said. "But it's not your fault, okay? It's never your fault." The kids didn't say much after that, but I could see the worry in their eyes. It broke my heart, knowing we'd caused that. Knowing that no matter how hard we tried to protect them, they'd still been hurt by our mistakes. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I tried to navigate this new reality. We took turns staying at the house, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for the kids. But it was hard. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of what she'd done. Every time she smiled at me, I wondered if it was genuine or just another lie. One night, after the kids were asleep, Emily and I had another conversation. This one was different. It wasn't filled with anger or tears, but with a quiet sadness. "Do you think we can fix this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to move past this and rebuild our marriage. But another part of me was terrified. Terrified of being hurt again, of trusting her only to have her break that trust. "I don't know," I said finally, "but I'm willing to try. For the kids. For us. But Emily, if we're going to do this, you have to be all in. No more secrets. No more lies." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said. "I love you, Alex." I never stopped. Her words should have comforted me, but they didn't. Because love wasn't enough to fix this. Not yet. We had a long road ahead of us, and I wasn't sure if we'd make it to the end. Rebuilding a marriage after infidelity is like trying to put together a shattered vase. You can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always be there, a constant reminder of what was broken. Emily and I were trying, but it wasn't easy. Every conversation felt like walking on eggshells, every moment of silence filled with unspoken questions and doubts. We started couples therapy, something I never thought we'd need. Sitting in that small office, across from a stranger who was supposed to help us fix our marriage, felt surreal. But Dr. Carter, our therapist, was patient and understanding. She didn't take sides or sugarcoat things. She just listened, guiding us through the mess of emotions we'd been avoiding. "Infidelity isn't just about the act itself," Dr. Carter said during one session. "It's about the betrayal of trust, the broken promises, and the emotional distance that led to it. If you want to move forward, you both need to be honest about what went wrong. Not just with each other, but with yourselves." Her words hit hard. I'd been so focused on Emily's betrayal that I hadn't stopped to think about my own role in our problems. Had I been neglecting her? Had I stopped trying to connect with her in the way I used to? The questions haunted me. But I wasn't ready to face them. Not yet. Emily, on the other hand, was more open. She talked about feeling invisible, like she was just going through the motions of life without really living. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said, her voice trembling. "I felt like you didn't see me anymore. Like I was just the mom, the wife, not me." Her words stung, but they also made me think. Had I stopped seeing her as the woman I fell in love with? Had I taken her for granted, assuming she'd always be there no matter what? The guilt weighed heavily on me, but it didn't erase the pain of her betrayal. It just made everything more complicated. Outside of therapy, we tried to reconnect. We went on dates, something we hadn't done in years. Dinner at our favorite restaurant, walks in the park, even a weekend getaway without the kids. But it wasn't the same. There was a distance between us, a wall I couldn't seem to break through. Every time she laughed, I wondered if she'd laughed like that with Mark. Every time she touched me, I wondered if she was thinking of him. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, I finally snapped. "Do you still love him?" I asked, the question spilling out before I could stop it. Emily looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "Alex, just tell me the truth," I interrupted, my voice shaking. "Do you still have feelings for him?" She hesitated, and that hesitation was like a knife to my heart. "It's not that simple," she said finally. "What I had with Mark, it wasn't real. It was a distraction, a way to escape from everything that was wrong in my life. But you're my reality, and I want to fix this. I want to fix us." Her words should have comforted me, but they didn't. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I could trust her. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. The kids, meanwhile, were struggling in their own way. Lily had started acting out at school. her teacher calling to tell us she'd been getting into fights with other kids. Jake, on the other hand, had become quieter, more withdrawn. He'd started wetting the bed again, something he hadn't done since he was 3. It broke my heart seeing them like this, like they were just kids. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of our mess. But no matter how hard we tried to shield them, they could feel the tension between us. They could sense that something was wrong. One night, after putting the kids to bed, Emily and I had another argument. It started over something small, a missed bill, a forgotten appointment, but it quickly escalated. "You think this is easy for me?" she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "You think I don't hate myself for what I've done?" "Then why did you do it?" I shot back, my voice rising. "If you loved me, if you loved our family, how could you throw it all away?" She didn't have an answer. Or maybe she did, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. Instead, she just stood there, crying, while I stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I sat on the porch that night, staring up at the stars, wondering how we'd gotten here. How had we gone from being so in love to this? Was it even possible to come back from something like this? Or were we just delaying the inevitable? I didn't know the answers. All I knew was that I was tired. Tired of the anger, the pain, the constant questioning. Tired of feeling like I was losing myself in the process of trying to save us. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Because despite everything, I still loved her. And maybe, just maybe, that love was enough to get us through this. Months passed, and the seasons changed. The leaves fell, the snow came, and eventually, the first signs of spring began to appear. But for Emily and me, time felt like it was standing still. We were stuck in this limbo, trying to move forward, but constantly being pulled back by the weight of what had happened. Therapy helped, but it wasn't a magic fix. We still had arguments, moments of doubt, and days when it felt like we were strangers living under the same roof. But there were also moments of connection, glimpses of the love that had brought us together in the first place. It was those moments that kept me going, that made me believe we might actually have a chance. One evening, after a particularly good therapy session, Emily and I sat on the couch, the kids asleep upstairs. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt peaceful instead of heavy. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. "Do you remember our first date?" Emily asked suddenly, a small smile playing on her lips. Chuckled, the memory bringing a warmth to my chest. "How could I forget? You spilled wine all over your dress, and I spent the rest of the night trying to make you laugh so you wouldn't be embarrassed." She laughed, the sound light and genuine. "I was so nervous," she admitted. "But you made me feel safe, like I could be myself around you." Her words struck a chord in me. That's what we'd lost, wasn't it? That sense of safety, of being able to be ourselves without fear of judgment or rejection. I reached out, taking her hand in mine. "I want us to feel that way again," I said quietly. "But I don't know if I can forget what happened." Emily nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I don't expect you to forget," she said. "And I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, to show you that I'm committed to us, to our family." Her sincerity was undeniable, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could get through this. Maybe we could come out stronger on the other side. But hope is a fragile thing, and it doesn't always lead to the outcome we want. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting in my car outside Mark's apartment. I hadn't planned to go there. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision, driven by a mix of anger and curiosity. I needed to see him, to confront the man who had played a role in destroying my marriage. When Mark opened the door, he looked surprised, but not entirely shocked. "Alex," he said, his voice cautious. "What are you doing here?" I didn't mince words. "I want to know why," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "Why did you do it? Did you ever stop to think about the damage you were causing?" Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't about you," he said finally. "It was never about you. Emily and I, We got caught up in something we shouldn't have. But it's over, Alex. It's been over for a long time. His words didn't bring me the closure I'd hoped for. If anything, they left me feeling more confused. Because if it wasn't about me, then what was it about? Was it just a mistake? A moment of weakness? Or was it something deeper? Something that had been missing in both of their lives? I didn't have the answers, and maybe I never would. But as I drove home that night, I realized something important. I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep letting Emily's betrayal define our future. If we were going to move forward, I had to make a choice. To either let go of the pain and truly forgive her, or to walk away and start over. The decision didn't come easily. It took weeks of soul-searching, of late-night conversations with Emily, of therapy sessions and moments of quiet reflection. But eventually, I made my choice. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to Emily and said the words I'd been holding on to for so long. I forgive you. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. Do you mean that? She asked, her voice trembling. I do, I said, taking her hand in mine. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward, to rebuild what we've lost. And I want to do that with you, Emily. But only if you're all in. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm all in, she said. I love you, Alex. And I'm so sorry for everything. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still challenges ahead, still moments of doubt and fear. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the right path, together. This story wasn't easy to tell, and it wasn't easy to live through. But it's a reminder that love, while powerful, isn't always enough. Relationships take work, honesty, and a willingness to confront the hard truths. Whether you're rooting for Alex and Emily or think they should have gone their separate ways, I hope their journey has given you something to think about. Thank you for watching until the end. If you've been through something similar, know that you're not alone. And if you're facing your own challenges, remember that it's okay to seek help, to take your time, and to prioritize your own well-being. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts on this story. And if you want to hear more real-life stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and check out my other videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.